Welcome back everyone. Let's go ahead and take a look at the Samsung Galaxy Note 20 Ultra and see how this phone holds up in 2021. Now what I can tell you is that this phone is still completely worth it. It's quite obvious. It's still a fairly new phone, it's definitely not old by any means, but there's been a lot of movement. There's been a lot of new phones that came out since this device, but I'm gonna be honest, this is like a perfect phone in my opinion. I mean, it has everything you need on it. At this point it does have an outdated chipset technically, but it's still not that big of a deal, and this is a beautiful phone for sure. If you want to pick this phone up, links will be down in the description. You can get them from there and help support the channel at the same time. Now starting off with the front, this device has that 6.9-inch dynamic AMOLED display, and it's a 1440p panel, and it's one of the best. I think it is probably the best panel of last year. I think this phone's panel is better than the Galaxy S20 Ultras of that time, and probably even better than the S21 Ultras. I mean, this phone is a crazy good panel. It's squared off, so it's not like a curved design on the tops and the bottom, but it's a curved display, which is something I really do like, and it's a 120Hz panel, so this is a crazy good screen. I love this phone a lot, and like I mentioned, I think it probably is or was the best panel of last year, and it's still one of the best panels for sure. You have USB Type-C on the bottom, you have the S Pen, which as most of you know is just like the best stylus out there. I mean, it's a stylus, but it has so many more capabilities, so many more features, that it's really just a no-brainer to have on phones, and I'm surprised the Note lineup still has it, to be honest. Although the Galaxy S21 Ultra does have the capability of having S Pen now, it is something that is really cool and I'm a huge fan of it. Now this phone also has the microSD card slot, which is another really big advantage. When you buy this phone, you have that capability of expanding the storage, where the Galaxy Note 20 and the whole entire S20 lineup or S21 lineup didn't have that capability. The S20 did, but the S21 did not have that, which is pretty crazy. And on the back you have the frosted glass back, which still looks and feels extremely good, and you have wireless charging, reverse wireless charging, you have IP certification on this phone, and the whole 9 yards. I mean, this is a flagship. This is a proper flagship for sure, and it still looks and performs extremely beautifully. Now you do have that triple camera setup on the back, which we'll go ahead and hit on right now. So it has that 108 megapixel wide-angle lens, 12 megapixel periscope telephoto lens, 12 megapixel ultra-wide sensor, and I mean, you have the triple camera setup. You have that beautiful camera that you can zoom in a lot, you can zoom out a lot, and this is a perfect camera. I mean, 8K capability, that's amazing. 4K at 60, you have a beautiful camera on this thing for sure. So in realistic use, whatever you're going to do with this phone, you're going to have a perfectly good time with it. It's not like you're going to pick up this phone and feel like the camera's not good enough. That is not the case. The only thing that kind of even bothered me a little bit about the camera was how top heavy it made the phone. Because this camera system is so massive, it actually makes the phone a little bit more top heavy. You probably will get used to it very soon, but it is something that kind of threw me off, if I'm being completely honest. And I do have that 10 megapixel front facing camera, so you have 4K 60 on that device as well. And I mean, the front camera is very good. I still think iPhones have better front facing cameras, but these ones have a ton of features, which is one of the biggest assets of picking up a Samsung phone, is that the cameras just have so much capability. They have so many crazy features that even like 7 years from now, we're going to look at this camera and be like, wow, this camera had crazy features even at that point. So take it as you will, but that's one of my favorite things about this phone, would definitely be the camera. Now that covers it up there. Let's go and hit on the software. Now this device has One UI, definitely not my favorite version of software. In fact, I put it still behind Oxygen OS, so it's in third place for my favorite versions of software in terms of stock software. But the good thing is that this thing's going to be lasting for quite a bit of time. One UI 4 is probably going to be coming out very soon, or at least in the beta form. And then we're going to have One UI 5, and I think One UI 5 is probably when this phone's going to stop. Possibly One UI 6. It just depends if Samsung's going to increase their lifespan or not. They've done it before. Actually, they've done it at this specific lineup of this device. So again, we don't know 100% for sure, but hopefully that ends up being the case. So this phone, like I mentioned, it's not my favorite version of software, but it gets the job done, and I'm sure if you throw a skin on it or something, I'm sure it'll be perfectly fine. Now the battery life of this phone is something that's still super crazy. I mean, it has a 4500 mAh battery, and that's a really big size battery to have on this type of device. Now even though it has a massive display and 120Hz and it's super powerful, the battery still does a great job of managing what it has. I personally do feel like the Note 10 Plus had better battery life, which is weird to say, but I still think this phone has really good battery life as well. So And it's one thing to have a really good battery life, it's another thing to have the battery features that this specific phone has as well. You have wireless charging and you have a reverse wireless charging, which again is one of my favorite things about this phone. Just by having that type of capability is super awesome, and I'm a huge fan of it. And I really do think a majority of you will actually be a fan of not only the battery life, but also the capability that's behind this specific thing as well. So in terms of the battery and the software, that essentially covers it up there. Now let's go and hit on the performance. Now this device does have that Qualcomm Snapdragon 865 chipset, an octa-core CPU, and Adreno 650 GPU, and there's a couple different models. So the base models have 8 gigs of RAM, but it does go up to 12 gig of RAM. And here's the thing, it immediately goes up to 12 gigs of RAM because there's 3 different 12 gig of RAM options and there's one 8 gig of RAM option. So you might as well go for the 12 gig in my opinion. But here's the thing about the performance of the Note 20 Ultra. I mean, this is still it's almost a perfect performing phone. How much better of a performance can you get from a phone like this? That is my question. And the answer is I don't really think, much. I mean, you can get a really good performing phone from this thing and not feel like you're missing out on too much. And that is the thing that I've been saying. I mean, yes, this is still a very expensive phone, but it is still like the perfect phone for a lot of people, even in terms of performance. Light tasks are going to be fine. Heavy intensive tasks are going to be fine. And as long as you get that 12 gig RAM option, you are future-proofed for a complete duration of this phone in terms of software and even security updates. I doubt by the time this phone is done getting updates, we're going to be at like 32 gigs of RAM on a phone. I mean, there's probably already phones like that, but in terms of a Samsung flagship, there's really no need for it. Obviously apps and games are getting bigger and bigger, but with this specific device, you are still ahead of the curve, and that is something I'm a huge fan of. So if you're talking about just sheer performance, this device's performance is extremely good. You are not going to feel like your specific device is extremely outdated anytime soon. And like I mentioned, that is one of my favorite things about this phone, and I'm a huge proponent of just having a phone and I can just buy and I can just forget about it. And I do think this is one of those devices that's right there. So that's essentially covers up the performance segment of it. And to kind of sum up this video and to answer the question, should you still buy a Samsung Galaxy Note 20 Ultra in 2021? Well, the answer is obviously yes. This phone is still completely worth it in 2021. It is a perfect phone for a lot of people. There's only a couple of things that maybe even throw me off a little bit. Things like, the camera being super top heavy. That is really the main thing that kind of threw me off with it. I mean, it's not like a deal breaker like I mentioned, but it is something that's kind of an annoyance more than anything. I wish they kind of leveled it out a little bit more. The screen is beautiful. I mean, this phone feels extremely good in the hand. The S Pen is something that's just really awesome. You have Samsung DeX through USB Type-C. You have a micro SD card slot on this phone, which is another awesome thing. You have wireless charging, reverse wireless charging. One of the best cameras still, one of the best performing phones still. I mean, yes, we have the Snapdragon 888, but the 865 is still a very good chipset as well. That's, I have no issues with that specific chipset either. And that's really it. I mean, it doesn't really get too much better than this, but maybe you might as well wait until the Note 21 to be honest. But even then, I mean, if you were in the market, buying the Note 20 Ultra is a very good idea in my opinion. So that essentially covers it up. Like I mentioned, if you want to buy this phone, you can pick it up from the link down below from Amazon, and you can help support the channel at the same time. If you guys enjoyed the video, hit the like button, but definitely hit that subscribe button. More importantly, everything else, I love every single one of you guys. Hopefully I'll catch you guys in the next video. Peace out till then.